Multiple tropical systems across northern Australia, one heading for Western Australia, another developing in the Coral Sea, and a third potentially forming in the first week of February. That S, what we are looking at over the next fortnight. Right now, across southeast Queensland, conditions are warm and humid. Brisbane hit 30 degrees this arvo with that sticky, uncomfortable feel. Up at Mount Carbine, they copped 30 degrees with 85% humidity and an hour of heavy rain last night. Down at Ipswich and Petrie, just north of Brisbane, they're hoping for decent rain. The pools need topping up. Paddocks are getting dry. That rain might be on the way, but not from the systems I am about to discuss. The Coral Sea right now has multiple areas of low pressure spinning up, and it's worth understanding what we're dealing with before we get into where these systems are heading. If you look at the current pressure map, there is a deep monsoon trough running right through the Coral Sea. That trough is connected to what was tropical low 14U, now a subtropical low racing off towards New Zealand. That system S expected to clip the North Island later today with damaging to locally destructive wind gusts, but that S New Zealand S problem, not ours. What concerns us is that monsoon trough. It's got multiple embedded low-pressure systems beginning to develop. The first one, tropical low 17U, is sitting in the northern Coral Sea right now. The satellite imagery shows rotation developing. Not strong rotation, but at S there. You can see the cloud pattern starting to organise itself around a common centre. That's the signature of a fully fledged tropical low. Now, conditions aren't overly favourable for this system to strengthen significantly. There is high levels of wind shear across the northern Coral Sea. You can see it in the satellite imagery, all that wispy cloud cover that looks like cobwebs. That S wind shear disrupting the system's ability to organise itself. And that S, pretty typical when you've got a strong monsoon trough like we are seeing right now. The good news for Queensland is that tropical low 17U isn't going to be a major concern. S forecast to bypass the Queensland coast and track further east into the Coral Sea. The system has that skewed wind field typical of monsoonal lows. The northern side will be stronger than the southern side. Queensland S looking at the weaker southern side. So while there might be some strong wind gusts around Willis Island and the Coral Sea Islands territory tomorrow, the mainland won't see much impact. But here, S, where it gets more complex. A second tropical low is forecast to develop northwest of 17U through Friday into Saturday. This second system will interact with the first one. What we're looking at is two tropical lows embedded in a much broader area of low pressure associated with the monsoon. That means both systems will struggle to become independent. They'll struggle to form their own defined centres of low pressure. For the Bureau of Meteorology to classify a system as a tropical cyclone, you need tropical cyclone force winds in at least 3 out of 4 quadrants around the low pressure centre. Even if it's just a little bit of coverage in each quadrant, you need those cyclonic force winds because these are monsoonal-based systems, dominant on one side and weaker on the other. They are never going to meet that classification, which means tropical cyclone intensification is quite unlikely. But don't let that fool you. Just because a system doesn't get named as a tropical cyclone doesn't mean it's harmless. Remember tropical cyclone Coogee? That system never officially became a cyclone, but it still had tropical cyclone equivalent winds in parts of its circulation. Same principle here. Between the major forecast models, we're re-looking at these systems remaining very monsoonal throughout the weekend. Then things get interesting in the longer range. The AI forecast models, which prove themselves deadly accurate with Coogee, show a general trend for these systems to track further east into the Coral Sea through the end of January. The forecast becomes uncertain at that point, but I'll come back to that shortly. First, let's talk impacts. Over the last couple of days, we've seen strong winds and locally heavy rainfall up in the Torres Strait and the far north of Cape York Peninsula. That pattern continues through Thursday and Friday. Parts of far north Queensland from Cooktown north could see rainfall totals of 50 to 100 millimetres over the next few days. Not drought-breaking rain, but enough to cause localised flooding in low-lying areas. For those in Townsville asking about heavy rain, the answer right now is probably not from this system. These lows are tracking too far east. They're not dragging enough moisture westward into the coast. You might see some scattered showers and thunderstorms, but widespread heavy rain looks unlikely from 17U. The real story this week isn't the Coral Sea. It is Western Australia. There's a tropical low developing off the northwest coast of WA that has the potential to become a significant system. And this one is worth paying close attention to if you are in the Pilbara or Kimberley regions. This system is currently forming in very favourable conditions. Sea surface temperatures are warm. Wind shear is forecast to decrease over the next 48 hours. and the system has a clear track toward the WA coastline. The chances of this developing into a tropical cyclone are now greater than 50-50, and it's not a 0% chance that this comes ashore as a severe tropical cyclone. The AI forecast models show a tight cluster of positions for this system. When you see the forecast tracks clumped close together like that, it means high certainty in the models. As we push the forecast forward, those tracks stay well together. This system is forecast to approach the northwest coast around Derby and Broome through Friday into Saturday. Timing matters here. If this system stays over water a bit longer and comes ashore Saturday afternoon as opposed to Saturday morning, it'll have more time to intensify. Some forecast models are taking this system up to Category 2 or Category 3 strength. Those orange and red colours on the intensity forecast aren't something to ignore. Now keep this in perspective. The cyclone code up in northwestern WA is some of the strictest cyclone code we have in Australia. They read no strangers to powerful systems up there. Category 3 tropical cyclones and below really don't worry them the way they might worry areas further south. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're really not looking at a Category 4 or 5. This isn't going to be an apocalypse. But if you worry around Derby and Broome, this is definitely a watch situation. Not act yet, but watch. Make sure your tropical cyclone season preparations are done. Secure loose items around the property. Stock up on essentials before the system arrives. Check your cyclone plan. Know where you're going if you need to evacuate. Have your emergency kit ready. The system is forecast to be relatively small and compact. Wind shear is only borderline favourable in the next 48 hours, so this could still fall flat on its face. But with the reduction in wind shear and very favourable conditions ahead of it, it is looking increasingly likely that this system will approach the West Australian coastline as a tropical cyclone, potentially even as a moderate or significant one. For those in northwestern WA, check back with the Bureau of Meteorology forecast every few hours. Watch for tropical cyclone watches or warnings. If they reissued, act on them immediately. Don't wait. Now back to Queensland and the longer range outlook. This is where things get particularly interesting. Major forecast models are showing a very active monsoon burst in the first week of February. That burst may produce a strong tropical cyclone or two out in the Coral Sea, potentially even in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Long-range forecast modelling can decide exactly where tropical cyclone activity will develop. Could be somewhere around the Cape York Peninsula, could be out near Vanuatu, could be somewhere in between. But generally speaking, a southeasterly motion is expected with these tropical low tracks. Until systems get south of about 18 degrees latitude, they'll track more or less parallel to the coast. Then they get pulled southeastward by the steering flow. That is the typical pattern this time of year. A worst case scenario would be a system developing offshore from Cape York Peninsula, but on the Coral Sea side. Not too close to be constrained by land interaction, but close enough to have a short track to the coast. That would give a system time to intensify over warm water before making landfall somewhere between Cooktown and Townsville. Now, I want to be very clear about this. We're re-looking at long-range trends right now. This is not a forecast. This is purely a trend outlook. Normally, I wouldn't bring up something this far out, but when you've got 30 to 40% of the ensemble forecast members calling for the same thing, it's hard to ignore. The AI forecast models show a couple of low-pressure systems developing out in the Coral Sea around the 1st of February. As the forecast pushes forward, that southeasterly motion kicks in. Towards the 3rd and 4th of February, some of those model runs show pretty dark colours, reds and pinks. Category 4 and 5 intensities approaching Queensland. Before anyone panics, listen carefully. This is a monitoring situation, not a preparation situation. If we do see a tropical cyclone developing, particularly something coming from the Solomon Islands area, we'll have up to a week's notice for the Queensland coastline. There is no point preparing right now or worrying about this system. You will have more than enough time to get ready if it does come toward the Queensland coast. What I'm showing you is what the longer range models are suggesting. It is a trend. It is worth being aware of. It is worth checking back on in about a week's time. But it's not worth losing sleep over tonight. The day-by-day tropical cyclone genesis charts show high chances across the WA coastline today and tomorrow, as you'd expect. Moderate chances in the Coral Sea. From 17U, those chances decrease a bit this weekend, but then you see that second tropical low coming in behind it. The chances really drop away. In fact, they begin to build as we get toward the last few days of January. You can see elevated genesis chances both in the Coral Sea and in the Gulf of Carpentaria. That trend is showing up across multiple forecast models. The potential for tropical cyclone development in the last days of January or first days of February is there. It is more elevated than what we do normally see even for this time of year during an active monsoon season. So where does this leave us? For southeast Queensland and the rest of the Queensland coast, tropical low 17U is of no concern whatsoever. It's tracking east away from the coast. You might see some showers and storms from general monsoon activity, but nothing directly from this system. For northwestern Western Australia, particularly around Derby, Broome and the Kimberley coastline, the risk is definitely elevated. Monitor the situation closely. Check the Bureau of Meteorology forecasts regularly. If you're replaced under a tropical cyclone watch or warning, act on it immediately. Make sure your preparations are complete now, not when the system is 12 hours offshore. For Queensland looking into early February, it's a watch and monitor situation. Check back on the forecasts over the next week. See if that trend toward an active monsoon burst holds up. See if those long-range model runs start to converge on a more specific scenario. A couple of practical points worth mentioning. If you're in a cyclone-prone area and you haven't done your seasonal preparations yet, now is the time. Tropical cyclone season runs through to April. We only in January. There's a lot of season left. Make sure you've got your emergency kit stocked. 3 days of water per person, 3 days of non-perishable food, battery-powered radio, torch, first aid kit, important documents in a waterproof container, cash, because EFTPOS 1T work if the power is out. Know your cyclone plan. Where will you shelter? If you are in a caravan or relocatable home, where will you evacuate to? Do you have elderly neighbours who might need help? Do your mates in remote areas have their preparations sorted? If you've got livestock, make sure they have access to shelter and elevated ground. Secure water supplies, check fences and gates, move equipment away from trees and power lines. For those asking about wind shear and whether it could change for southeast Queensland, yes, it could. Wind shear patterns are forecast to shift through early next week. Whether that increases or decreases the risk for the southeast coast depends on where low pressure systems develop and how they interact with the monsoon trough. Right now, the shear is keeping things disorganised. If that shear decreases while moisture and instability remain high, you could see more organised storm development, but that's a question for next week forecast, not today. One more thing worth mentioning, we're having an almost Carrington-level solar storm at the moment. Some of you down south saw Aurora overnight, beautiful photos coming through from southern Queensland and northern New South Wales. That's a reminder that weather isn't just about the troposphere. The sun influences our atmosphere in ways we're still learning about. And when you see Aurora this far north, you know something significant is happening with solar activity. To sum it all up, 3 main points. 1, tropical low 17U in the Coral Sea is not a threat to Queensland. It is tracking east. Monsoonal conditions will keep it from intensifying significantly, but watch for that second low developing behind it through the weekend. 2, northwestern Western Australia faces a genuine tropical cyclone threat through Friday and Saturday. The system developing offshore has favourable conditions to intensify. It could reach Category 2 or 3 strength before making landfall around Derby. If you're in the Pilbara or Kimberley, this is a watch closely situation. 3, long-range models suggest an active monsoon burst in early February with potential for tropical cyclone development in the Coral Sea or Gulf of Carpentaria. Too early for specific forecasts, but worth monitoring over the next week. Stay informed. Check the Bureau of Meteorology website regularly. Sign up for emergency alerts for your area. rely on social media for warnings. Get your information from official sources. If you're replaced under a tropical cyclone watch, that means cyclone conditions are possible within 48 hours. If you are placed under a tropical cyclone warning, that means cyclone conditions are expected within 24 hours. Know the difference. Act accordingly, and remember, the Bureau of Meteorology, your state emergency service, and your local council are the authorities when it comes to warnings and evacuations. Follow their advice. They have access to more detailed, more current information than any weather enthusiast can provide. For those in southeast Queensland hoping for rain, your best chances over the next week look to be from general monsoon showers and thunderstorms, not from organised tropical systems. Keep an eye on the forecast. If that monsoon trough shifts west or south, you could see heavier falls, but right now the organised low pressure systems are staying well offshore. That is the situation as it stands this Wednesday afternoon. Check back tomorrow for updates, particularly on that Western Australian system. Conditions can change quickly with tropical cyclones. What looks like a Category 1 system today could be Category 3 tomorrow if conditions align right, or it could fall apart overnight if wind shear increases. The key is staying informed and being prepared. You can control the weather. You can control how ready you are for it. Stay safe, pay attention, and don't panic. We've got time to prepare for anything that